What if you could grow fresh lettuce all winter without spending a single cent on electricity, without artificial heating, with a technique that generates enough heat to keep the soil between 21 and 29 degrees Celsius while it's freezing outside? That's exactly what we're going to discover today. And I'm warning you, what I found after weeks of research is going to completely change what you think you know about this method. There's a fascinating story circulating on the internet. They tell you that the Romans grew lettuce in winter using pits with manure that fermented and heated the soil. Imperial villas producing fresh vegetables while snow covered Rome. A secret lost for centuries that we're now rediscovering. Sounds incredible, but there's a problem. A big problem that nobody is mentioning. I reviewed the original Roman agricultural texts. I searched through Columella, Pliny the Elder, Cato, Varro. I looked for archaeological evidence from imperial villas. I consulted scientific studies from universities like Cornell, Missouri, and Penn State. What I found left me speechless. The technique works. The science is absolutely solid. You can generate up to 30 degrees of extra heat using only manure. But the story you've been told has serious errors. Errors that change everything. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how this method works, why it generates so much heat, which types of manure work, and which ones are useless, and the true story of who invented it. Spoiler, it wasn't the Romans. And most importantly, you'll have verified information with sources you can check yourself to decide if you want to implement it in your garden. Welcome to the knowledge that history almost buried. Let's start where nobody starts. The original text. Because if we're going to talk about a Roman method, we need to see what the Romans themselves said, not what someone on the internet says they said. Columella published De Re Rustica between the years 60 and 65 of our era. It's the most complete Roman agricultural treatise that survives. Pliny the Elder completed his Historia Naturalis in the year 77. These two men documented everything they knew about Roman agriculture. If the Romans used hotbeds with fermenting manure, it would be here. Columella precisely describes the method used for Emperor Tiberius. And this is what it actually says, I quote directly. Well-manured soil enclosed in baskets with wheels, covered with slabs of transparent stones called specularibus. The gardeners moved these baskets into the sun on warm days and withdrew them under cover when it was cold. Let's stop here, because this is crucial. The baskets had wheels, mobile system. The gardeners chased the sun during the day and protected the plants under shelter at night. The covers were made of transparent stone, not glass. They used selenite, a crystalline gypsum mineral that Pliny says was extracted from mines around Segovia in Spain. The manure was mixed with the soil as fertilizer to enrich the substrate. Notice what's missing? There's no mention of using manure to generate heat. None. The heat came from the sun trapped by the transparent stone, not from fermentation. I've searched through every surviving Roman agricultural text. The concept of using fermenting manure as a heat source simply doesn't appear. It's not there. That part of the story is a modern invention. And there's another error that's constantly repeated and demonstrates how misinformation spreads. Everyone says Tiberius demanded cucumbers all year round. This story appears in hundreds of articles. But historical horticulture researchers, specifically Harry Paris and Jules Janik, published studies in 2008 and 2022 that completely debunked it. The cucumis that Columella describes wasn't cucumber. It was snake melon. Columella uses the Latin word hirtus, which means hairy. He also describes it as serpent-shaped. Those characteristics correspond to snake melon, a variety of Cucumis mellow, not the cucumber Cucumis sativus. Want to know when true cucumbers appear in Europe? The first pictorial evidence dates from 1335 in a manuscript from Pisa, more than 1,200 years after Tiberius. The Tiberius story is real. The Roman texts confirm it. But the vegetable was melon, not cucumber. A translation error that became historical fact. because nobody verified the sources. This matters because it illustrates a pattern. People repeat what sounds good without verifying, and that's how myths are born. Now comes the part that changes everything, because although the Roman story is a myth, the technique is absolutely real, and the science behind it is impressive. Heat generation through thermophilic decomposition is one of the most solidly documented phenomena in agriculture. When fresh manure decomposes, billions of microorganisms work so intensely that they produce heat as a byproduct. It's basically a natural biological reactor. Cornell University has studied this process for decades. Their data is conclusive. The microbial process produces temperatures of 60 to 70 degrees Celsius in the core of the material. 70 degrees. That's enough to pasteurize. The peak is reached in 2 to 5 days, and well-designed systems maintain the thermophilic phase for weeks or months. The claim of 10 to 15 degrees of thermal elevation circulating on the internet is conservative. Too conservative. The University of Missouri Extension documents that hotbeds with manure raise soil temperature to 21 to 29 degrees when the surrounding soil is near freezing. That's an elevation of 15 to 30 degrees above ambient. Your lettuce growing actively while there's frost outside. But the most impressive data comes from Commonwealth Urban Farms in Oklahoma. In February 2021, they recorded an extreme cold snap. Outside temperature, minus 24 degrees Celsius. Temperature inside the hotbed, 8 degrees positive. A difference of 33 degrees. 33 degrees of free heat. No electricity, no gas, just microorganisms doing their job. That's not theory or marketing promises. Those are real measurements in extreme conditions. This is where most people fail, because not all manure works the same, and using the wrong one means zero results. Horse manure is optimal. Horses have a digestive system that doesn't completely break down plant material, leaving energy available for microorganisms. Plus, it comes naturally mixed with bedding straw. This combination provides the ideal carbon to nitrogen ratio between 25 to 1 and 40 to 1, perfect for sustained decomposition. Poultry manure generates very high, very intense heat, but it's difficult to control. It can overheat quickly and then cool down before desired, only for experts. Sheep and goat manure works moderately, adequate heat capacity, but inferior to horse. Cow manure is practically useless for this. Cows have 4 stomachs that break down material so completely that no energy remains for secondary fermentation. Excellent fertilizer, terrible heat source. If someone tells you to use cow manure for a hotbed, they don't know what they're talking about. For it to work, you need critical mass. This is the most common mistake. The minimum depth of fresh manure mixed with straw is 45 to 60 centimeters. Less than that, and there's not enough material to maintain fermentation. The heat dissipates too quickly, and you lose all the benefit. The duration of useful heat is 6 to 8 weeks with proper management. After that, microbial activity decreases. You can renew the material or add fresh manure to extend the cycle. Critical detail: the manure must be fresh, not composted. Mature compost has already passed through its thermophilic phase and won't generate significant heat. You need material that still has chemical energy available. The smell confirms it. Here's the twist that changes the whole story. There's no evidence of transmission of Roman horticultural knowledge through the medieval period. An archaeologist named Roos van Oosten investigated rectangular medieval pits as possible hotbeds in 2014. Inconclusive results. There's no way to confirm they were used for cultivation with fermentation heat. The technique of couches chaudes, hotbeds in French, emerged independently around the 16th century in the outskirts of Paris. French gardeners probably discovered the phenomenon by observing that accumulated manure generated heat. They didn't inherit Roman knowledge. They reinvented it. The key figure is Jean-Baptiste de La Quintinie. Born in 1626, died in 1688. He was the head gardener for Louis XIV at Versailles, responsible for the Potager du Roi, The King's Vegetable Garden. His treatise Instruction pour les jardins fruitiers et potagers, published in 1690, documents lettuce production in December, using fresh manure from the royal stables. This is the first detailed technical document about hotbeds that exists. The true inventors were French from the Renaissance, not ancient Romans. The peak came with the Parisian maraîchers of the 19th century, and what they achieved is extraordinary. Maraîcher means market gardener. There were approximately 1,800 gardeners operating plots of 0.4 to 0.8 hectares inside Paris. Inside the city, they produced fresh vegetables all winter for Parisian markets. Their system combined thousands of glass bells called clochets with hotbeds fed by manure from urban transport horses. Paris had thousands of horses for transportation. All that manure needed to go somewhere. The maraîchers turned it into heat and money. Moreau and Deverne documented these techniques in Manuel pratique de la culture maraîchère de Paris, published in 1845. Fresh lettuce in January, while the rest of Europe ate stored vegetables. 1,800 gardeners feeding a city with technology that required no electricity or fossil fuels. That's real ingenuity. Regarding the supposed imperial Roman villas using hotbeds, the evidence is clear. It doesn't exist. Roman hippocausts, those underground heating systems, are extensively documented. We find them in baths, residences, public buildings, but no excavation has revealed hippocausts for greenhouses or forced cultivation. None. Tiberius's Villa Jovis on Capri has been extensively excavated, where the famous cucumis for the emperor was supposedly produced. There are terraces, cisterns, palace remains. Zero evidence of heated horticultural structures. Recent excavations like the Villa Saint-Nitas near Auxerre, discovered in 2025, reveal gardens with fountains and residential areas with hippocausts, but no horticultural structures with heating. Decades of excavations. Zero evidence. At some point, you have to accept that the Roman myth is exactly that, a myth. That it's not Roman doesn't mean it doesn't work. It means it works for scientific reasons, not magical ones. And that's better. University extensions from Penn State, Missouri, and Nebraska document hotbed construction and operation with step-by-step instructions. Penn State directly compares costs. Electric heating cables cost $20 per season in electricity. Manure provides equivalent heat for free. Elliott Coleman operates 4-season farm in Maine, climate zone 5, temperatures that drop to minus 29 degrees. He documents production of more than 30 cold-resistant vegetables without supplemental heating. He generates $80,000 gross per acre of winter production, $80,000 per acre in winter, without electric heating. For lettuce specifically, varieties like Winter Density and Mache thrive in hotbeds. The optimal soil temperature is 21 to 24 degrees, exactly what a well-built hotbed maintains for 6 to 8 weeks. We started by asking about a lost method that produces massive harvests effortlessly. The answer is more interesting than the myth. The technique works. Fermenting manure generates enough heat to grow lettuce all winter without electricity. This is proven by universities and documented by farmers earning $80,000 per acre with it. But it's not Roman. The Romans had greenhouses with transparent stone and mobile baskets. The heat came from the sun, not from fermentation. The true hotbeds are a French invention from the late Renaissance, systematized by Jean-Baptiste de La Quintinie at Versailles, and perfected by 1,800 Parisian gardeners who fed an entire city in winter. To implement it, horse manure, 45 to 60 centimeters deep, 6 to 8 weeks of heat. Winter Density and Mache varieties, zero electricity. Documented results. The next time you hear about a lost ancestral method, do what nobody does. Ask what the primary source is, who originally documented it, what that document actually says. True knowledge doesn't need to disguise itself as ancient mystery to be valuable. This technique works because science works, And now you have the sources to verify it yourself.